Waking up in Asra's room, enveloped by his scent, I soon uncover a chilling secret. I was meant to be a bargaining chip in a deal. But who is the mastermind behind this? 66. I suggest you let her go if you want to keep your entire hand. Asra snarled. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐬𝐷𝐞𝐫𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. A shiver ran down my spine as he pressed himself into my back. I felt every hard plane of his body, and the way his chest widened as he sized up the male. The male's eyes widened, but before he could let go, Asra was grabbing his wrist and snapping it. The crunching and cracking of his bone hurt my ears, and the man yelled in pain. I stumbled in fright, pushing my body more into Asra to get away from the sickening sight. My stomach churned as the male's hand now stood at an angle from the wrist. Asra's fingers still tightly wrapped around it. You do as I say. Asra snarled. Yes, Alpha. The male whimpered. Asra growled. Not letting go. Touch her again and I shall do more than just break it. Yes, Alpha. The male was wincing with pain but bowed to his alpha, apologizing profusely. Asra's anger was permeating the mate bond, my body weirdly noticing it. He whimpered once when Asra threw his arm to the side, before running away with his tail between his legs. Asra was silent as he watched him go, only turning to me after he snapped at the crowd. Back to what you were doing, he glared. I stepped away from him the moment his attention was elsewhere, but as soon as I did, he grabbed a hold of me. His dark eyes studied me, his spare hand moving to caress my jaw. I flinched at the contact, knowing what that hand had just accomplished. Tulip. I swallowed nervously, holding his gaze. Yes, are you okay? My jaw ticked with agitation. I was perfectly fine doing my job and protecting my co-workers, and he had to come and snap some damn man's wrist to show that he was the boss. It was infuriating, making me seem weak in front of a dozen people. I had it handled. I grunted. Yes, bad. Mouthing a male unmated wolf is really clever. He rolled his eyes. You nearly got hurt. I didn't. I glared. It was me or her. He studied me, wonder lighting up his eyes. I kept my gaze steady, eyes narrowed as I dared him to continue. I knew if I stood my own, I had a chance of looking strong. Darius hated it when I stood up for myself, and a deep part of me feared if Asra would ever do the same, but ever so slowly. His lips quirked with amusement. You get yourself into trouble. Tulip, he tapped D, squeezing my cheeks. You are a troublemaker. I couldn't help but smile at his lack of care. I expected retaliation, if not for my ability to get into trouble, but by the way I spoke to him. I shrugged him off, losing my glare and replacing it with a smirk of my own. I attract trouble. I know. I clicked my tongue. His thumb moved down to capture my lower lip, pulling it before he let go. Yes, you do. I think I may need to leash you to my room. Like to see you try. I hummed, stepping away from him. Did you enjoy dinner? His jaw tensed at the reminder of my latest hobby, but he nodded. It was the best chili I've ever had. I grinned. The best. Yes. He huffed. Although I am not happy about you, I cut him off, pecking his cheek. Blinking at my sudden advance. I really think we should talk about. I spun around, diverting my attention to find a distraction. I made eye contact with the girl who was approached by the offending male, seeing her still stuck like glue to the spot we left her in. You okay? I asked her, ignoring Asra's heated glare. Thank you, she muttered, nodding. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐸𝐷𝐞𝐫𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I shook my head. He had no right to treat you like that when you were just trying to get some food. She blushed, avoiding looking at the alpha wolf as she took her plate to a table. I admired the group of them as they animatedly chattered over their dinner. I had taken care of most of the cleaning, so they did not need to worry about cleaning up. I was skilled in taking care of the kitchen, so I already sorted everything in that sense. You. Asra began. Me, I hummed, looking up at him. You did a good thing for her. He quirked an eyebrow. Although it is very against every rule here. I know. First of many, hey. I cut him off again. He glowered at my ability to avoid his lecture. And I grinned innocently. Tulip. Butterscotch. He blinked. Confused. His head rearing at the nickname. Butterscotch. I thought we were using nicknames. And butterscotch is the first thing you came up with. I nodded. Why? He wondered. Turning to grab my plate from Serenity. She bowed for her alpha. Her half, Wolf sighed, recognizing his status. Your dinner. To my 𝐊𝐴𝐷𝐿 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She handed me my plate. Oh, thank you, Ren. I beamed, taking the plate from her. Why butterscotch? He insisted. Following me, I eyed him from over my shoulder as I made my way over to a table. You figure it out. Asra stared at me, unblinking. The humans sat at the table had paused mid-dinner, their eyes wide and heads bowed. Not liking the way they hid from him. He must have some reputation if they were like this. Turning my frown to Asra, he cleared his throat before nodding. I will see you after this. I expect you in my office. To my 𝐊𝐴𝐷𝐿 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He muttered to me, his hand resting on my back. We have things to discuss, your actions today. Okay. Amused. Sorry. No can do. Sitting down. I have to help make dinner for the pack. It's non-stop in there, with a lack of workers. I will only get to coins and I need those so badly to have a meal later or tomorrow. Did you know some humans have fallen ill? I wonder why. His eyes blazed with agitation, his back tensing at my comments. I knew he was smart enough to realize I was hinting at the poor living and working conditions. I made it rather clear. If I'm honest, I would not listen to him. I was a human, and I was going to live like one of them until he realized it wasn't right. It wasn't like we were at war. That was over with. Humans and wolves needed to live in peace. Life here for me has been so good, so others deserve that too. Such little pay is preposterous. And being worked like slaves is even worse. Asra must have had a reputation, and I needed to find out more before I let him get any closer. The way people reacted to him had me wary. I will see you after dinner. He did, handing before stepping away. Asra excused himself, his hand lingering on my back before he walked towards his beta in the corner. Rio smirked at me almost knowingly. Before capturing his alpha's attention in a conversation, I hadn't even noticed the man was here, too preoccupied with Asra to look around. I settled into my chair, grabbing a fork and beginning my lunch. The surrounding girls began to eat too, their pace fast, as though someone was about to steal the food away from them. Wondering when the last time they had a proper meal was. Serenity had claimed they stole tidbits of food, so I was worried about their health. Asra would wait a while for me, because I would not go to him. If he wanted to talk so badly to me, he was going to have to learn he can't boss me around. I have been bossed and controlled my entire adult and teenage life. It was time for me to be the boss. He couldn't hurt me. It was ingrained in his DNA. I had the upper hand, because I did not feel so strongly about him. Or so I thought. I let out a loud sigh of relief when my body melted in the shower. The water was warm and soothed my aching muscles. I was back in the room I had previously occupied, finding it empty apart from sheets on the bed. I ran shampoo through my hair, moaning quietly at the feeling of being so clean. My limbs ached with the need to rest and get off my feet, but it was a welcome burn that reminded me of the happy days when I worked in Evermore. Just like in Evermore, I forced myself to wash before going to sleep, cleaning the grime and sweat away from my body. The kitchen had been hot. Cooking all day with only one break in Maytime had definitely got me burning some energy. Closing my eyes, I savored the feeling of cooling down my body, begging for it. I had only just washed the soap from my hair when the water suddenly cut off. Blind, my soapy hands could not rub away the stings of soap in my eyes. What the F? I never got to finish that sentence. Someone grabbed me from behind, my heart leaping into my throat as they wrapped a towel around me. Still blind to the soap, I did not know who was throwing me over their shoulder. They trapped my arms in the towel, my head banging against their back. The tingles that ran along my forehead calmed my nerves immediately. "You sure do like to test me, Tulip," Asra snapped. "Hey," I grunted, unable to pull my arms free. I heard the click of a light switch before he pulled a door open. The softness of what I expected to be carpet muted his heavy footsteps. He had one hand firmly wrapped around my body, securing itself on my ass. Somehow, despite only using half his body, he kept me firmly on his shoulder. It was weirdly attractive and only made me squirm to get out of his hold. "Where are you bloody taking me?" Asra was silent, marching me to an impending doom. I half expected my body to react in fear, but surprisingly, I felt calm. Call it the mate bond or magic. I knew he would not hurt me intentionally. A door opened softly, the room still dark, going by the shadows on my eyelid. My soapy, wet hair was trailing down toward the ground, coating Asra's shirt. Finally, a light clicked on, followed by the rushing of water. I barely had time to register what was happening before I planted on my feet and thrown into the cold, jumping out of it with surprise. "What the hell?" Asra growled, and I aimlessly reached out to find the dials to turn the water. I could tell right away I was back in his zen, sweet by the smoothness of the shower controls. I fumbled for the right one, my mind a mess from being dragged upside down. A slap of something hitting the floor had me freeze, my hands glued to the wall. I felt Asra's warmth come up behind me, an arm snaking over my shoulder as he reached for the dial. The water changed its noise and soon I felt the warm splatters of the shower ricochet on my skin instead. Stepping toward the source, it alarmed me when my body hit bare skin. I was moved to the water, my head covered in soap as the water poured down on me. My eyes burned as I scrubbed the soap from my hair, too long being coated in suds to not ache. One clear, through blurry vision, I scoured my surroundings, only to be taken aback with alarm at a very blurry naked man stood behind me. 67 brief sexual content language. I stumbled back into the wall as blurry Asra smacked at me. He advanced a step, following my motion, so I had no choice but to press myself against the cold tiles of the shower. My back arched at the contact, a surprised gasp leaving my lips. Through the pouring water, he stepped until he was a breath away from me. "Tulip." Despite the tension, I found my lips parting with words. "Butterscotch." His eyebrows furrowed as he licked the water that beaded from his upper lip. I had never thought the man could get more attractive, but here we are, soaking wet and not just from the shower. "I don't think I am fond of that name. How about we try a new one?" I exhaled shakily. "Like what?" "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." He cocked his head. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." "Sir, baby. Alpha's a baby. Bit of an odd one," I spluttered, despite the urge to get out of here. His lips curled with a smirk, unaffected by my ignorance. He just loved to ignore my words of wisdom. "Don't you?" I licked my lips, wanting to move the hair from my face but failing to gain the courage. He hovered over me, his body wide and blocking most of the light and shower from pouring down on me. It cascaded down his back and shoulders, caressing his waist before falling lower and lower. I flickered my eyes back up when I settled on his. "Something wrong, Tulip?" His hand came to move the hair from my face. I cleared my throat, quickly shaking my naughty thoughts away. "Nothing, and I don't exactly think your words are wise." He chuckled darkly, his hand moving to caress my throat. "I tell you to run away, and you do not listen. Then I tell you to not defy me, and yet you do." And his eyes dropped to where his hand lay at the column of my neck. "I do not defy you. I simply disagree with your wishes." He grinned, flashing his teeth. "Is that what it is? You disagree? Yes. His eyes were dark blue, a color of an ocean under the night sky. I gazed into them, getting lost in their depths. It was an infinite pool, one so deep that I felt myself getting pulled by the current. It was warm and safe in here as his intensity enveloped me, and I found my heart racing to catch up with the rhythm of his own beating in his chest. Asra's hand flexed, fingers tickling the mark upon my neck. 𝐿𝐤 𝐑𝐞𝐝𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐑𝐞𝐻. My eyes closing as I arched my neck to allow him more access. He hummed softly, a gentle grumble that vibrated my chest from his proximity. 𝐿𝐤𝐧𝐑𝐞𝐝, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing 𝐊𝐢𝐧𝐑𝐞𝐻. His soft lips traced my jawline, sucking the beading water from my skin. My body arching into his until my hands fell upon his chest, my breasts pressing against his upper stomach. His other hand snaked down my waist, grabbing at my hip. I gasped when he gently brushed his mouth against mine, briefly enjoying the taste of his lips. Water beaded down his nose, falling onto his lips. My tongue darted out, tasting him, severing him. He groaned, closing the remaining gap and securing his mouth to mine. I melted in his touch, sliding my arms up and around his shoulders to grab at the back of his neck. I tugged his hair as both of his hands now tugged at my ass. My body lit up in flames as his tongue danced with mine, the sounds of the shower drowning out my moans. My calf brushed against him, my body aching, begging to be touched as goosebumps blossomed on my skin. One of his hands moved, wrapping around my thigh and knee and hoisting it up around his waist. I gasped when I felt his hardened member press against my lower stomach, unconsciously grinding into it. He groaned softly, his lips leaving mine to kiss and suck down my jaw and neck. My head fell back, eyes closed as a million stars blinded my mind. My breaths were heavy, my chest heaving as I panted to catch my breath. But Asra didn't stop. He ground into me, my body scorching where we touched. His other hand hitched my other leg until he wrapped me around his waist. The fact he could hold me up so easily, even though we were head level. His mouth fell to my chest. He sucked at my skin, leaving sweet little marks along my cleavage before he took my nipple into his mouth. I shrieked quietly, jerking in his hold as he flicked his tongue against the hardening nub before moving to the other. Speaking of hardening nubs, I could feel it from up here, now and then brushing my core. It made my thighs clench around him, the aching hollowness inside me taunted by his length. I was in a world of my own, lost and begging for help, for salvation. Tulip, he panted at Asra. I moaned in return. Tulip, 𝐿𝐤𝐧𝐑𝐞𝐝, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. I sighed as his mouth left my skin. Tulip, I groaned, forcing my eyes open to stare into his. His pupils were blown as he watched me, my skin no doubt flushed and full of color. 𝐿𝐤𝐧𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. I snapped. Despite being in the throes of passion, he had the decency to smirk. I will not mate you. 𝐿𝐤𝐧𝐸, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing enthusiasm. I gasped. I will not complete our bond in the shower. He tapped D. I may be an animal, but I want your mind to be clear, not under a mating spell. If I keep on going, I am afraid I will not stop. That the bond is. I spluttered, confused. I could feel it pulsating between us, begging us to join, like the temptation of a sweet dessert after a fast. It wanted me as much as I wanted it. He shrugged it off casually. Can wait. My mind whirled with questions and emotions, all of which he must have felt by the frown on his face. I had allowed him back into mind as we kissed, and he must have felt every passionate thought that crossed my mind. I flushed, embarrassed. This bond thing really was a tease. It's okay. Tulip. Besides, call this your punishment. Punishment. I gaped at him. What have I done? Disobeyed your alpha? He smacked my ass, causing me to jump in his arms. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I snorted. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. His fingers curling in my skin. Yes, you. See, doesn't alpha just fit so much better than butterscotch? I narrowed my eyes at him. Being head level gave many benefits. I have done nothing wrong. You refused to meet with me in my office. You defied my orders and took upon a job when you are the Luna. He quirked an eyebrow. Not yet, I interrupted, scoffing. He glowered at me, his lips in a firm line. Not only that, you shower in a different room, away from me. That room is technically mine. This is your room. You're mine, and I am yours. And we share this space. He demanded, trying to threaten me. We sleep, eat, dress, shower, everything in here. It is our space, our room. It only seemed to do the opposite effect. Instead of feeling intimidated by his attempt at telling me off, I found my chest filling with warmth. It was an odd thing, being told that something was mine. I had never truly had anything. Growing up, Mother forced me to share space with Arabella, that I was made to work, despite how much I loved it, for my family's well-being. Then every penny I earned was for my family, and then finally, I lost everything to Darius. Possessions, my mind, my body. Nothing in that house was mine. The clothes were things he chose, the house was always his, and I should do well to remember that. I could strip you of everything. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. You are nothing without me. You have nothing without me. Darius would taunt. A hand caressing my face had me jumping back to reality, my eyes blinking to clear the water that built up in them. Asra was staring at me, concerned, his head cocked as he entered my mind, his eyes hardened at my most recent thoughts, and I batted him out of my head with a huff. Tulip, he retreated. Don't. Shaking my head, he slowly set me on my feet, nodding once. I was glad Asra knew boundaries. It was one thing I admire, the fact he let me have what I want, share this space, own this space. Wait, did I just say that I admired him? Shit, was he growing on me? I eyed him skeptically, running my eyes along his form, avoiding the semi-hard length between his thighs. He crossed his arms under my scrutiny, making himself tense up and appear larger. Looking away to glare at the floor, my eyes caught the sight of my body, pale, freck KLY arms and legs. What was I even doing here? Asra grabbed me, shoving me under the water again. I shouted out loud, cursing at him before jumping back out. What was that for? Clicking his tongue. Get out of your head. I am out of my head. I am out of my own fucking body. He laughed. Actually laughed. It had me pause to stare at him in awe. Such a sound had never sounded so magical. It was deep, but youthful, a noise that had my body warming up to its vibrations. Witnessing his amusement, he softly stopped the laughter, clearing his throat with a smile. You shouldn't swear. I can do what the fuck I want. I crossed my arms and nodded firmly. I don't mean it like that. It is utterly a turn-on. My cheeks flushed with embarrassment as I caught the wrong end of the stick. I should have known Asra was going to switch this up. He was good at this game. Way better than me. That's for sure. 10 minutes ago, I was ready to jump his bones and ride the glory stick to victory. Clearing my throat, I changed the topic. Why did you carry me here? To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I told you, it's your punishment for defying me. You are not the boss of me. I muttered. You enjoyed it. He cocked his head, his eyes blazing. You shower here now. Every time with me. What? You have a job. So you broke the deal. You shower with me now. Whenever I hear you shower, I will be right here. That is. I spluttered, shaking my head. Wonderful. I know. I'm looking forward to it too. He grinned. How was I supposed to survive the next few weeks of our bet if I had to shower with him every time? Asra seemed to notice my surrender because he laughed again. Come, I will show you the benefits of showering together. I already had one thought in mind. Asra grabbed my arm softly, pulling me into the large shower head together. He pressed a button on the wall, which seemed to turn on more shower heads that were hidden within the tiles. It was warm, but I still stepped closer to him. His palms ran down my arms and sides before he reached around me to grab the shampoo. Turn around. What? I reared my head in surprise. His eyes flickered, a stern expression in place. Turn. Swallowing, I turned until my back faced him. I heard the cap of shampoo open and close, his arm coming around me to put it back. I swallowed when his chest brushed my shoulder, his breath exhaling along my cheek. Standing upright behind me, Asra's hands found their way into my hair. He rubbed the shampoo in, massaging my head in just the right places. I hummed, closing my eyes and allowing him the feature. It felt really fucking good. He took care in rinsing it, tilting my head back and exposing my throat. His hand stroked down my head and hair, his face moving until his breath ran along his mark. Only I get to see you like this. Naked, wet and exposed. He put into my ear as I went to shy away. Never turn your back on anyone. Never expose your throat if threatened. You are above them all. And you are mine. I shivered as he growled the last word. My mouth parted, ready to protest my status. But a quick tug on my hair had me shutting up and holding back a moan. But I don't care what you were told. Your body is yours, you do not owe anyone anything, he demanded. You own your own body. 𝐿𝐤. Believe me when I say what a marvelous creature you are. Goosens rose on my flesh as I softly thanked him. The shower fell quiet then, and his body moved to rub conditioner into my lengths. I stayed quiet as he tasked himself with cleaning me, scrubbing my every part until I was sudsy and clean. I let it happen, enjoying the feeling of his hands gliding over my body, his nails scratching my skin just right. When it came to his turn, it surprised me to find he was still, his body calm, although I was on display to him. It was an odd thing for me, one that had me questioning my appeal. But then he growled and kissed me forcefully, snapping me out of my daze, reminding me it was not always about sex. I blinked through wet lashes to find him looking at me with so much emotion it was breath-taking. What had I gotten myself into? 68 that night. I lay in bed, unable to succumb to sleep, but I could feel it tugging at my mind, tempting me to take its hand and fall into its depths. Asra was breathing softly beside me, his shoulders rising and falling with every breath. Rolling over to face him, there was so much distance between us. I could feel my body buzzing to be closer. The temptation to just touch him grew too strong. I shifted slightly, my head at the edge of my pillow. He was inches away now. I could smell the freshness of his clean skin from the shower. After he had groomed me in the shower, he quickly washed himself. He watched me like a hawk, his dark blue eyes following my every movement like he knew I was going to escape. I wrapped a towel around my body, watching him cautiously as he began to dry himself. I preferred to drip dry, only drying the necessary parts. Asra ran the towel through his dark hair before gliding it over every curve of his body. I had watched him through the mirror as I applied creams to my skin, courtesy of Piper's help previously. We dressed in silence, and before I knew, here I was, struggling to sleep and agitated by every ray of moonlight that dared to peek at me through the smallest gap in the curtain. My agitation only grew when my mind locked onto the noise of a clock ticking. With every passing minute, I felt my anger boiling. Pushing myself from the bed, I discarded the duvet and headed straight to the spot where the ticking was the loudest. The clock was small, sat above the door that led to the bathroom. I grunted, knowing I couldn't reach it. Being quiet left my mind as I grabbed a nearby chair and placed it beneath it. Climbing the chair, I took hold of the clock and grinned manically down at it. "This is what you get," I sneered, my reflection grinning back at me. Turning it over, my fingers felt the clasp at the back before finally revealing the hidden treasure. Pulling the battery from its case, I raised my arms in a silent cheer of success when the clock stopped ticking. Exhaling heavily, my shoulders sagged, and I closed my eyes, taking a moment for inner peace. I savored the silence. "Do I want to know why you are standing on top of a chair in the middle of the night?" I opened my eyes, looking over my shoulder to find Asra sat up in bed. He watched me with amusement. His eyebrow rose despite the tiredness in his eyes. "I'd hardly say it's the middle of the night." I rolled my eyes, glancing at the recently deceased clock. "It's 11 o'clock. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Once you have done murdering timepieces, get back into bed." I snorted, agreeing with a nod of my head, slowly getting down from the chair. I placed the clock on the bedside table before crawling back into the sheets. I sighed when the warm cotton slid across my body, wishing that it was cool to be satisfying on my skin. My tired head hit the pillow, and once again, I found myself staring up at the ceiling with disdain, rolling over with more protest. I barely got the chance to set my head back down when an arm wrapped around my waist. I inhaled sharply when Asra pulled me to his front, pressing his body into mine. I held my breath, my body coated with shock. Despite having slept next to him for a while now, we had never been this close. Perhaps in sleep, but all the times I woke, we had been on our respective sides of the bed. Feeling the hardness of his body against my back was enough to have my heart racing. One of my plans to last the next 2 weeks was to not let him get close in bed. I was about to wriggle out of his hold when he released a deep growl that had 𝐾𝐿𝐳 rising on my arm. It vibrated my back, my body going tense. "Sleep." Allowing my body to relax, he growled again, which had me close my eyes and sigh slowly. My body decompressed, relaxing into the arm beneath my neck. Weirdly, from the warmth of his body, I felt my mind finally shut down. His other arm snaked around my middle as I settled. His hand sprawled out along my upper stomach. "Good night, Tulip," he whispered into my arm, kissing my throat. 𝐾𝐿𝐳 rose on my skin where he touched me, but I was too far gone to reply, nudging my head into his arm to get comfier. He shifted so his elbow settled beneath my ear. A heavy sigh left me as I let myself just enjoy the feeling of him against me, and finally, I fell asleep. "Tulip, what are you doing?" Asra wondered. My head snapped towards him, a wide grin on my face. "Oh, good morning." He was half asleep as he watched me dress. I was currently struggling to get my shoes on whilst tying my hair into a bun. It was nothing too extravagant, but Asra's calculating eyes held me captive. I had woken in the same position I fell asleep in. Asra's arms were heavy as he cradled me, his body warmth providing way too much heat to be comfortable with the duvet on. But as soon as I checked Asra's shiny gold watch and saw that it was 6 o'clock, I felt regenerated. I was looking forward to getting to work in the kitchen again, and after dressing and making sure I looked the part, I pulled my shoes on. "Where are you going?" he wondered, glancing at his watch. "I'm late to help with breakfast." I tucked him, standing tall, suddenly awake and back to being moody. "Why must you insist on this beneath you job?" I narrowed my eyes, ready to fight. "Did you not listen to me yesterday?" he grunted, standing from the bed. I averted my gaze, knowing if I looked too long, I would drool. I think he knew too, going by the slight quirk of his lips. As he walked closer to me, I huffed, crossing my arms. "Oh, I heard you, Tulip. I just didn't want to believe that my mate in Luna would lower herself to such standards." "Such standards?" My head reared. "I have if it wasn't for those girls cooking for your pack every day, you would have a lot of mess and upkeep to make time for. A job is a job. A job when every job has its own contributions to society. Just because it is a manual job and not a warrior job, does not make it any less of one. He watched me silently as I vented. It was too damn early for this. I will not sit on my art whilst everyone else he gets to do stuff. I have experience. Before I rot in this room, I might as well make it worthwhile. I jutted my chin, glaring at him. He hummed, running a hand along his jaw. I see you have thought this out well. Of course I have. Perfect sign of leadership. Perhaps the goddess was right sending you to me. I faltered in my poker face, my expression turning to one of confusion. What is that supposed to mean? He inched his hand forward to pinch the corner of my face with his fingers. Wolves act on impulse and instinct. Maybe all I needed was a little guidance. I was the guidance I assumed. The deeper thinker he was hinting at. It made me think how a goddess of a difference of species set my life up. It was still bizarre to think about. I clicked my tongue, shaking my head. You and your goddess, we make an impressive pair, don't we? His eyes hinting at something more. I hesitated before stepping away from him and checking my invisible watch. Wonderful chat. But got places to be and all that. Oh yes. You better go time, murderer. I will see you later. I paused on the threshold of the hallway. Where will you be today? In my office. He cocked his head. I will try set up your council meeting. I grinned, nodding. Amazing. I do try. He grinned, winking. I couldn't help but roll my eyes. A smirk of my own lining my lips. Stepping into the hallway, I let the door close softly behind me as I hurried my way to the elevator. I stepped into it in a daze before I found myself in the kitchen. Cool. And now I was here. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Luna, Sorrenti chimed. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐬 heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Ren, washing my hands. I thought I told you to call me 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐬. She blushed, recalling that conversation. I am still a wolf, so it is hard for me to do that, especially when I already see you as my Luna. I shook my head, moving to help her with the meat. Most wolves woke between 7 and 8 in this pack, and most enjoyed meat after a night of sleep, so there was a lot of sausage and bacon to make. I am not your Luna, though. Not yet. She rolled her eyes. You bear his mark. It is only time before the bond finishes it. That damn bond, I muttered. Ren giggled. She always found me amusing. Apparently wolves didn't have such worded thoughts and impulses, and she enjoyed the way I openly voiced my opinions and inclinations. I have done nothing as your Luna, so I don't deserve the title. I continued. You have given us an extra free meal a day. That is enough. It is just basic human rights. Lining up a grill sheet with bacon. But we are not humans. She laughed with glee. Wolves have hierarchy. You destroyed that yesterday by giving us hot, fresh food. I scowled, shaking my head. That's not right. We are still animals. To my agent extraordinaire, 𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐬, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She nudged me with her elbow. It's a lot of learning curves to overcome. Living here has given me a new perspective on things. I commented, disagreeing with her without openly saying it. She smiled softly, setting up a new tray. But we continue, because that is what we do. We observe and learn, and it is up to us to make an action of that, whether it is good or bad. I contemplated her words, agreeing softly. She was right. We observe and learn, and then we have to choose what we do with that information. Ignore it or use it to our advantage or otherwise. I'd like to think I was an observant, open person, but I still struggled with the wolf flaws in politics. To have others not eat because they are lower than the rest of the pack was just wrong to me. If that was what made a Luna, basic rights, then slap a red stamp on my forehead and call me Moon. 69 as were forced me to shower with him for the next 5 days. He was relentless in not allowing me to wash myself. I liked to shower before I fell into bed, to wash away the grind of a workday. But Asra was always there. I think he knew when I left the kitchen and intently followed me to the bathroom. He was understanding my habits more than I did his. He was still a mystery to me, even as I stood bare and sudsy, and his hands ran along the length of my thighs with a fire burning in my belly. I still did not know this man. That made me nervous. He stood upright when he finished, with an accomplished smile that soon dropped at my scowl. "What is it? I know nothing about you." I shook my head. "Like, nothing." He cocked his head, blue eyes darting between my own. "What are you getting at?" "Tulip, I want to learn more about you. If I am stuck with you like you say I am." I gave him a pointed look, at which he smirked at. "Then I need to know you more. I am standing naked in front of you right now and know nothing but your name and title. But I like it when you call me Alpha." I scoffed at his teasing. "Stop changing the subject." "Fine." Moving me under the shower head. "Get rinsed off. We shall talk about it when you are done being delectable and wet." I scowled at him as the water poured down my face. He shot me a wink before stepping out of the shower and getting dry. Despite being drowned in the shower's current, I couldn't help but admire his body. Powerful hands clasped the towel around his waist, broad shoulders glistening with beads of water. The sharp view of his pelvis that disappeared beneath the towel. I had to correct myself from drooling. The urge to lick the water from his taut skin was too strong. This bond thing, I had seriously disbelieved that it was a thing. Being more attracted to someone because of it was barbaric. Right. But the past few days, it has been harder to keep my mind and eyes from wandering. Even the simplest of things I found terrifyingly attractive. How he would eat or swallow. How he would stretch. Or the placement of his arms and legs. It was getting frustrating. My body was reacting to his more so than usual. I even sought his touch in the night so I could sleep. Asra was being very laid back about it all, pretending it wasn't happening. I just hoped he was having a war with himself about touching. But I highly doubted it. He seemed the type to know what he wanted. Turning off the shower with an annoyed huff, I watched as Asra left the bathroom, now fully nude. I gritted my teeth before moving to the vanity and getting dry and ready for bed. I plaited my hair, leaving it into long braids down the sides of my head, before also leaving the room naked. As I approached the bed, I found Asra already lying on his side, the duvet pulled to the side. I narrowed my eyes at his chilled-out reaction to my nudity. He didn't even seem the slightest bit affected by me compared to how I felt about him. I angrily got into bed naked, back to my usual ways. It seemed to catch his attention as I nestled into his new boxer, cloud front, a small growl leaving his throat. "You are sleeping naked. Nudist. Remember." "I tut-dee," he hummed, wrapping his arms around me. Hard to forget. My body ignited with fire at his touch and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep quiet. Safe to say that night, I did not sleep without lucid dreams of Asra's post, body looming over me. The next day, the pack was buzzing with energy. Apparently, a full moon was coming, which meant my 2 weeks were nearly up. I had made the deal with Asra and Piper a week ago, so I was halfway through my battle. And yet, it wasn't anywhere as bad it was. This morning, I woke alone and did not think about Asra once as I got ready to help in the kitchens. Today was a slow day cooking. Most of the pack to pent up about the full moon in 2 days. It meant that they were hunting more, to store up for a feast. The past full moons they hadn't gone this mad, but perhaps this one was different. It was June now. My appearance in this pack long since old news. The only thing keeping my mind busy was that it was the last full moon I would get to spend with Piper. She leaves tomorrow, which will be a day of great sadness, but she had her own responsibilities to tend to. I don't know why she extended her stay in the first place, since her entire purpose was to get to know Asra a little more personally. But that ship sailed, and her appearance here had been rather anticlimactic. How would she even tell them? Oh yeah, he is a mate. She's a weak little human though, and they haven't fucked so. Shrug. Doesn't seem very informative. You okay there? 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Stephanie wondered. I hummed, looking up from my work to seek her out. How you are rather vigorous with your stirring today. She quirked an eyebrow. Oh, am I? Glancing down at the cooking pot of cheese sauce. I didn't realize. She smiled softly. A lot on your mind. There. Cook my thoughts into my food. Always feels good. And tastes better too. I was glad she understood and felt my shoulders sag with relief. Yeah, it does. Keep it up, girl. She winked before moving to her own side. I evened out my breaths before continuing, pouring all of my thoughts and emotions into my distraction. Breakfast was already done, and lunch was well underway. Before I could react, I was sitting around the table with the girls, eating our meal of the day. Time had blurred by without even realizing, and the evening shift would soon take over. Only the younger girls got to leave early, the rest staying on to earn those extra coins. I was just about finished with my meal, my fork being placed down one last time as I leaned back in my chair. I smiled softly at the cheerful chatter at our table, glad the girls were relaxed in taking time for themselves. As soon as they finished, I excused myself to the bathroom, leaving my plate on the kitchen side for later. After relieving myself and washing my hands, my eyes caught sight of the silvering mark on it. My fingers lightly traced the surrounding area, millimeters away from touching it. Goosebumps rose on my skin at the thought of the sensations it would give me. It was strange how easily I accepted his mark. In the heat of the moment, I had been desperate for the safety that it would give me. If I had known that it would incline me to have sex with him in a matter of weeks since, then I may have changed my mind before his teeth pierced my skin. Wolf seemed to enjoy biting me. Leaving the bathroom, I was just about to enter the kitchen when a hand wrapped around my arm and pulled. I stumbled, a shout of protest escaping me as I fell into their body. They giggled, and I groaned when I realized it was Piper who held me in a death grip. Oh no you don't, she chirped. You are not going back to work. What are you talking about? It's my shift. Wrapping my fingers around her own, it only made her squeeze tighter, a manic grin on her face. I have already spoken to the chef. She cleared you of work for the night for some well-needed time off. 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Steph shouted from inside the kitchen. I shut the closed door a glare before sighing as I turned back to Piper's giggling face. Well, this has to be for a reason. Right. You know me so well. She beamed. We are having a girls' night. Time to dress up and look pretty. 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I groaned yes. We will get dressed up, pick out snacks and movies. A proper girl night in. 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I dragged the word. You sound an awful lot like a parrot. She chided. It will be fun. Come on. Not that the idea wasn't tempting. I have never had a girl night in my entire life, so it intrigued me. I have seen it on the television in Asra's room, read it in the teen fiction books I borrowed from the town's library. Asra's library was way too advanced for me to understand. He had classics that spoke strangely, or books that had too big words for my mind to comprehend. I may know how to read and write thanks to 10 years of school, but being so isolated from further resources as a teen can only get you so far. Arabella got lucky and could continue with school. Okay. 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. 𝐿𝐤𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐬 Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Piper grinned. jumping on the spot. Yeah, let's go then. You need to shower. Is that really necessary? I wondered as we walked towards the elevator. You stink of kitchen sweat and meat. Not that I'm against you tasting like dinner, but it will be rather distracting when we are so close in your room. My room. This is happening in my room. I wondered, thinking about the barely clad bedroom I had before. Well, duh. Asra has the best-looking bed and television I have ever seen. 𝐊𝐥𝐻𝐬. I trailed off, nodding with understanding. That room. What room did you think I meant? 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐷𝐞𝐬. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. She giggled, stepping out of the recently arrived elevator to walk towards my room. It was still going to take me a while to adjust. He had claimed it was mine, his ours, but it was a lot to wrap my head around. I had to learn to accept it that it was also mine. I knew that, but Piper was right. It was way better than my old room. Get a nutshell whilst I get the preparations. She clapped, fussing me into the bathroom. Preparations. I scowled, turning on the bathroom light. No questions, just cleanliness. Now go. I groaned as she pushed me again, finally adhering to her commands and turning on the shower. Stripping bare. I sniffed at my clothes, my nose wrinkling as the smell of pork drifted through my nose. Perhaps she was right. I mean, a night off having fun and being clean sounded fantastic right now. It would give me a chance to clear my head and get things off my chest before she leaves. So, with that, I stepped into the shower and rid myself of all the grime. If I had known what awaited me outside the bathroom door, I would have taken longer. Piper was waiting and forced me into a seat. She blow-dried my hair with grace before being straight and down my back. She clipped a few pieces to the side, admiring how long my hair was when no long. Wild and untamed. I have never seen my hair so shiny and clean. She added some oils to it too, before drying it. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐸𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. That made it smell like heaven itself. All of this happened too quickly, and just as I went to get up to get dressed, she adorned me with creams, palettes of color and powders that made my skin glow. When finished, I stared at the stranger in the mirror. I had used makeup before, to hide the dark and red colors of my skin, but for an entirely different reason. I had never had a girly makeover, and it made me feel. I turned around to ask what she was doing next, only to find Piper was standing before an array of dresses. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐸𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Sheepish grin on her face. Why all the clothes? I grunted. I didn't know what to wear, so I brought them all here. She grinned. You're going to dress me like a doll, aren't you? Her innocent giggle did not hide the dread I felt in my stomach. Piper was quick to make me stand and force me into some black panties. The first dress she gave me was a blue strapless number, which explained the bra. She hummed and dawed as I displayed it for her, before she shook her head. It's not like we are going anywhere. I groaned as I stepped into the fourth dress. Can't I just wear this one? Nope. To showy. She chided. Strip. Yes, ma'am. I muttered begrudgingly. 6 dresses deep was when she seemed to pause. Dress number 6 was a black mini dress, with thin spaghetti straps that suffocated my every curve. Spinning for her, she finally let out a joyful scream of glee. That's amazing. She grinned. Definitely the one. Great. I sighed with relief. Can't forget the heels. She sang, thrusting a pair of black heels into my hands. I stared down at them in confusion. 𝐿𝐤𝐳𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐸𝐿. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Well, completes the outfit. I scowled, suddenly noticing my situation. Why was I standing here dressed and dolled up? Piper remained in her jeans and top. Her day makeup was still in place and her hair was in a ponytail. She turned to me with some jewellery in hand. What is this? Necklaces. I think this one, she hummed, securing it around my neck. My hand found the pendant, staring at its moon crescent with sudden dread. That is not what I mean, and you know it. Oh, shush. She giggled as a knock sounded on the door. Oh, they're here. That better be pizza. I won't. Even better and more delectable. She grinned, walking towards the door. It's your date for the evening. My eyes widened with horror. Did she just say date? 70. How did I not realize she was priming me for a date? Why did I not realize? As soon as Piper swung the door open, I was taken aback by what was standing behind it, leaving me no time to dwell on it further. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Who stood behind it? Asra wore a formal black suit and a blue tie. As Asra stepped into the room, his formal black suit and blue tie, tailored perfectly, accentuated every hard plane of his torso and shoulders. He smiled as he thanked Piper, and she giggled as she left the room. An itch started beneath my skin, one that had me begging him to look at me and not Piper. Then, his eyes drifted to mine. My breath hitched when they wandered my way, my heart hammering in my chest, the blood pounding in my ears. Nerves ate away at my insides. The fact it was my first time being dressed up in so long did not make me feel any more secure. Asra's eyes barely hung onto mine before they were drifting, widening slightly as he ran them along the length of me. I stood awkwardly, still clutching the pendant around my neck as I fought to catch my breath. Piper was a sneaky fucker. Asra's eyes only seemed to appraise me, causing a fire to burn within my body that had me shifting my weight and clearing my throat. Those midnight blue eyes locked on mine with such adoration that I sweat how to breathe. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He began, clearing his throat and stepping closer. You look stunning. I flushed, dropping my eyes to stare into the silk tie around his neck. To pass the awkward tension, I dropped the necklace and shifted his tie so it was straight. You look great too, I murmured. He chuckled. Not as good as you. Piper did. Something to you. Yeah, the conniving minx. I huffed, pushing some hair behind my ear. Asra's eyes followed the motion, fingers coming to take the strand from my hair and drift his fingers down its length. I chewed the insides of my cheeks as he watched the strand float from his fingertips and back to its resting place. It's a lot longer than earlier. He commented about how straight it was. I couldn't help but laugh. Shrugging, she turned me into someone else. Yes, it seems you look a little different, he mused, settling his hands on my hips. His eyes drifted down, casting obviously over my cleavage before drifting to my waist and hips. His fingers flexed on my body, a snore grumble leaving his throat. This dress, however, is something else. Now, since you both have kidnapped me from work, care to tell me where we are going? Nope. Removing his grip, the heavy warmth of his hand wrapped around mine and pulled me from the bedroom. Glaring at him as he walked me down the hallway to the elevator. Once we stopped to wait for its arrival, I squeezed his hand with annoyance. Why won't you tell me? You will protest either way. Tulip. I will not. Causing him to shoot me an amused smirk. Enough said. I grunted as the elevator opened, a passing wolf complimenting our looks as they vacated the death box. Asra's grip tightened on my hand as he pulled me inside, before pulling me closer to him as we rested against the glass wall. Isn't it crazy how dressing up can get you so many compliments? I rather like this. Tulip, but the other one has true beauty, he murmured. What? I breathed. Can he not start with the romance novel-worthy lines just yet? Can I at least sit down first? And I saw the glimmer of his eyes in the mirror before us. His expression was soft, heartfelt, and I wasn't quite used to this Asra. The staring at my boobs and ass was normal, but the soft smiles and words were already giving me palpitations. The elevator dinged, Asra pulling me out of it once more. I hadn't even realized the length of the journey, finding us on the lower level of the pack house. 1 point to me, 0 points to Deathbox. Where are we going? I whined as he took me out of the house. I took a moment to admire my fairy lights around the porch, the darkening sky letting them shine in all their glory. It was nearing sunset, so I thought wherever we went had lighting, because if it was a dark trench for my murder, I'd rather not see my doom. Asra glanced down at my shoes with a grimace. I told her no heels. Her Piper. I told her no heels. Oh well, I will just carry you to the car. See car? I squeaked. The distant memory of my last car trip did not make the sworn any easier. Yeah, we are taking the car. He nodded, looking at me from the bottom step. My worried eyes met his confused expression. The single step height difference with heels meant I was the same height as him. His nostrils flared as he gazed at me, before he softly sighed and moved closer. You think it'd be like a princess story, and I get bridal swept into his arms. Right. If only that was so true. A bird-like squawk left my lips as Asra's arms wrapped beneath my hips, lifting me up by the arse like a plank of wood. My hands met his shoulders, gripping onto them as my spine went rigid. Asra only chuckled, my breast resting at the slope of his nose as he walked forwards blindly. I grunted, slapping him lightly as he nibbled my skin through the tight dress. This is not how I imagined you would carry me, I complained, squeezing his shoulders a little too tightly. It only seemed to spur him on as he nibbled my chest again. Tulip, I like it a little rough. I grunted a sound of blank agreement. Of course he did. The soft click of a car door opening had my head spin around to find a driver stood in a black suit, holding the door to a sleek black car. Asra didn't even thank him as he set me inside the car, smirking at my glare. I was quick to adjust my dress as Asra thanked the driver with a pat on the back and climbed in beside, pushing me by the hip until I slid across the seats. What even is going on? I muttered to myself. Asra's answered a soft chuckle as he rested his elbow on the now-closed door. I watched the driver as he walked around the car, the windows dark and eerie. As soon as he sat in his chair and started the engine, I was quick to scramble for my seatbelt. Asra watched me with a quirked eyebrow, pulling the belt around me and clicking it in. I thanked him softly, taking a moment to appraise him. His strong thigh was straining inside of his trousers, the belt on his crotch creating a noticeable bulge that had my toes curling. His chest was broad, and I just knew how warm it was from near moments ago. He was just so large, taking up most of the seat on his side of the death trap. How long is the journey? I whispered. About 15 minutes. I swallowed harshly, nervously gripping the door handle as the car lurched. Where are we going? He entertained me, thankfully noticing my nerves. I will tell you if you guess correctly. Shaking my head and meeting his dark gaze. A wager? That isn't a very good one. Well, you want to know something, so how are you going to get it? I glared at him, wanting to cross my arms defiantly but not wanting to let go of the car door. The road was dirt and gravel and very bumpy. Fine. I huffed. I'll play your guessing game. Great. You have 3 guesses. I gaped at his amusement, shaking my head. The village CF. He narrowed his eyes, shaking his head. Strike 1. I huffed, crossing my legs. A picnic in the woods. As pleasant as that sounds, I doubt you'd be able to see a foot in front of you, and I'd rather Minister first stayed in the middle of the forest, he replied sickly. I scoffed at his teasing. I had to think right, otherwise I'd lose the game. We dressed nicely, taking a nice. Where would I even be going? Dancing. No, he wanted no heels. Is it a restaurant? I wondered after a moment of debating. He hesitated, cocking his head and pursing his lips. Okay, I will give you that. It is a restaurant, but not just any restaurant. What? That's not fair. You can't just let me on with more information that I can't get. I complained. His laughter filled the car, causing my heart to skip a beat at the pure sound. I even saw the driver glance at his Alpha with shock, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. Okay. As payback, I have to guess something, he suggested. I hummed, though pondering his idea. Okay. What is the topic? I needed something good. I didn't want him to win the game I had already lost. Okay. Guess my favorite color. I nodded triumphantly. He hummed, rubbing the stubble across his chin. Pink. I gaped at him. Pink. Do I look like a pink person to you? Trailing his eyes along my chest and bare legs. Maybe not. Try again. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. He cocked his head. Nope. Last chance. Smarty pants. I poked my tongue out at him. His eyes blazed as he watched me tease him, his hands moving to grab my cheeks before trailing his thumb along my lower lip. My own eyes widened as the tingles spread down to my core. A shooting star that hit its target. I clenched my legs together, trying to hide the sudden arousal and beating of my heart. He hummed, cocking his head as his nostrils flared. Glue, seems we are at a stalemate. I clicked my tongue, my breath fanning his face. He groaned, his eyes closing as he took a minute to compose himself. He moved away stiffly, hands adjusting the fabric suffocating his crotch. I grinned with triumph, glad I got an upper hand for once. I won this game. What is our stalemate? Tulip. My favorite color is blue, but you failed to guess the shade. Is it my eyes? He winked. It wasn't, although they were pretty color. Now, you're out of guesses. I teased him right back. Instead of a glower I expected, or the scoff of disobedience I was used to, Asra's lips pulled back into a toothy grin. I was so distracted by the sign of a small dimple in his right cheek that I barely noticed the car pulling to a stop. My head spun to look out of the window. Curiosity piqued my interest. There were bright lights outside, highlighting the name of the restaurant the 𝐾𝐿's own. Is that a pun? I feel like that's a pun. Where are we? Turning to look for him, but alas, he wasn't there. My door clicking and opening had my eyes raised to meet whoever stood the other side. It pleasantly surprised me to find it was Asra, his hand outstretched for me to take. O left my lips before I fumbled with my seatbelt. Taking his hand, he chuckled softly as he pulled me from the car. His hand never left mine, even after I stood beside him and met his gaze. I wasn't a small woman in the human world. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I really needed to ask him how tall he was. Shall we? Jerking his head to the golden entrance. I swallowed nervously but nodded, letting him lead me towards the entrance. A doorman bowed once at us, opening the door for us to enter. We walked down a red-carpeted, soft golden hallway until we came to a wooden podium. A blonde woman stood, her hair tightly pinned to her head and adorned in a red blousy dress. Reservation. Zenith. Asra clicked his tongue. I squeezed my disapproval into his hand, not happy with his bluntness. Table for two. Yes. Asra grunted before hesitating. Please. She smiled, nodding and leading us away. I will take you to your table, Mr. and Mrs. Enith. My eyes widened, looking up at Asra with shock. I did not know we were married. Pulling me into his side and wrapping his arm around my waist. Entertain me. Tulip. It's our first date. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nelban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm.